Hello, and welcome to another tale snatched right from the heart of the Jakuls. As always, I'm your sincere host, Lothran, and I'm ever so ready to plunge into these depths. So let's get started, shall we? Go grab a filling meal, select a comfy seat, and pay judicious attention to Grahlings Part 6, The Self That Is. Dath thrust his sword while screaming at the pile of decaying meat. His name meant filth. It felt so very true as he stumbled away from the heap of tattered, growling corpses. He oozed black blood from a dozen injuries, crawling over the remnants of the battle. He dragged his heavy sword behind him, squishing and squelching through black, churning mud made of growling, vital essence, and a fair amount of hacked-off limbs and fingers. Dath fell backwards with exhaustion, witnessing a long spear pass through the space he had just occupied. Summoning energy Dath was sure he didn't have and could not muster, he deflected the next stab as he rolled back up to his feet. "For the Master!" Two larger enemy growlings shouted in unison. Dath picked up whatever refuse his free arm could haul off the sodden ground. So in the next second he found himself fending off one attack with his sword, and another with the severed head of a growling, friend or foe. Dath didn't care which it was. He was constantly driven back by his two opponents. They worked as one, as most growlings could in groups of up to 20 with ease, even without the presence of a Zir or an obelisk. Normally he might be able to fend them off and kill one of his foes, but exhausted, drained, injured in 3 or 4 major ways, even with his great constitution, Dath knew he was facing the very immediate end of his life. He chose the only option left to him. He turned and ran, leaping with fright as a spear struck the ground beside him, propelling him up and through the air over another large mound of corpses, his legs moving practically on their own. Dath screamed in fright again as the ground fell away beneath him, replaced with a sharply steep, jagged hill. He landed on his face and just kept rolling and smashing his way into every stone and sharp, jutting bit of dead tree stump all the way to the bottom. Dath moaned painfully as he came to a stop. He heard a buzzing, tickling into his thoughts. He tried to move, but found that his limbs would not answer his pleas. Dath could hear the careful, if plodding steps of the 2 other soldiers descending ever closer to him. The buzzing slowly transformed into a hum, as Dath managed to slowly push himself away from the pair, with a ruined and agony-riddled foot, and the bare, fleshless bones where his right hand had, oh so recently, been. He had to keep striving for something. He had to keep fighting. Every moment away from his Zir was precious. Every order that took him beyond the rings was a joy, no matter the cost, no matter the torment. Anything to be away from such a monster, even just a few breaths more. As he hauled himself along, crossing some invisible line, the hum turned to a dull, repeating pattern, almost a primitive song, the bare bones start to a thoughtful rhythm. Dath heard the pair approach, and slow with their anticipation-fueled growls of delight at finally capturing their victim. Dath ignored them as he stabbed his bloody stump once more into the dry, cracked dirt, thrusting forward with both his ruined foot and what little remained of its left leg, rolling over onto his back for just that little bit of extra distance, and practically throwing himself at the soil ahead of him, if only a few inches at a time. "Yes!" he heard the odd whisper of a haunting voice in the back of his mind. "Take my my strength. Take as much as you need. You must get to my side and flip me over. Hurry! I'm going as fast as I can, Dath yelled into the thin air, finding his muscles working twice as good as they had a second before. Now he was pushing himself a half a meter at a time instead of almost a quarter of one. You must hurry! The voice begged ever so slightly louder in Dath's head. I'm going as fast as I can. Dath forced the words from his mouth as the pain in his limbs began to clear the further he pushed himself towards the source of the voice. The pair of Grahlings behind him entered the metal lip of the circle that Dath could somehow feel behind, passing after a few steps the spot he'd come to rest upon after the ordeal with the hill. Dath kept dragging himself along, his murky vision obscuring all that was before him. So close! The voice clamored for Dath to hasten his movements. I'm right here. Just another push and then flip me and I can help you again. No energy, Dath replied as he fell to the ground beside the angled stone edges of the force, speaking into his thoughts. You must! I have no more reserves. I've been left too long. The voice begged of the growling beneath it. Dath cried out in terror and agony as the spear burst through him with enough force to pin him to the ground where he lay. He woke back up long enough to awkwardly grip the edges of the octahedron with both sides of his stumps, having the barest margin of mental presence to push up with what little remained of his legs while rolling his body to his right side and letting go as the absolute last particle of his energy fell from his body. We have you now! One of the Grahlings hefted his spear while the other laughed. The medium-sized hive sank toward the ground, its dagger-sharp point piercing Dath's ruined foot as the soil glowed beneath both of them. The hive flared a deep, hateful red, and both enemy Grahlings fell to the ground, their eyes and ears erupting in gouts of blood. Dath felt his leg begin to heal and elongate with the direct touch to the hive. There was no pain, just immense discomfort, until he realized he had to rip his leg free from the presence before it became too much of a burden for him to bear. Then, as he ripped the limb away, there was only torment. Hello, Dath. What? Dath exclaimed as he sat up looking down at his freshly skin-covered limbs. I'm glad you landed where you did. Otherwise, it would have taken so much more time to heal you. You call this healed? I did what I could. The rest is up to you. You must now draw a thread from beneath the surface of my body when I have had the chance to charge again. Dath gazed at the ground beneath them, faintly glowing in a pattern of red, then gold, then somehow black light. How am I going to do that with no hands? He leveled 2 different length stumps at the hive. You still have a mouth and most of 1 foot. You won't need much, just a few threads at a time, woven into your stumps at fresh injury points. That will help you reshape what you lost, for now. Why are you helping me, not the other 2? Dath gazed at his fallen foes and the black and gold ring about 10 meters from where he and the hive sat. I was on backup power supply for far too long. I scanned you the moment you landed it within the rings. Been doing it with creatures on and off for eons, mostly birds. You were the first half-intelligent speck to cross my path in quite some time, and I ran out of almost all my reserves, scanning your mind as the others approached. I gambled on the creature I could know, not the pair that I could not. What if they had killed me, he asked. Lucky for both of us, we don't have to think about things that didn't happen. Now are you going to keep pouting, or is there a chance you have some bigger left in those stumps of yours? Give me a minute. Okay, how do I draw threads? And so it is, our time has once more come to an end. I hope you enjoyed the story as much as I have the telling. As always, I've been your reliable host, Lothran, and this was Grahlings, Part 6, The Self That Is. Another tale straight from the heart of the Jakuls. Now, we must part ways. Korvoth, guide them back to the safety they know all too well.
Yes, sir, Lothran. A pleasant greeting and a fond farewell to each and all. Please leave your comments, questions, and kindnesses down below. None of that awful, rude, or mean stuff, though. You keep that to yourself. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to help us learn, spread, and grow. Don't forget that we strongly implore each and every one of you to stay safe out there. Good night and good luck. You'll need it. Bye-bye.